It's 5 p.m. and thank you for joining us for the Natchitoches Parish School Board meeting, regular meeting on March 9th, 2023. Please, members of the audience and board members, silence your phone and electronic devices. And we have many numerous items on the agenda today. If you care to speak to one of these items, complete a form in the back of the room and pass it up to the front so we can recognize you. Ms. Revels, could you give us a roll call vote?
Mr. Danzy.
Roll call.
Here.
Mr. Matuire. Mr. Benefiel.
Here.
Mr. Harris. Mrs. McGaskey.
Present.
Ms. Palmer.
Here.
Ms. Phelps.
Here.
Ms. Harvey.
Here.
Mr. Fredu.
Here.
Mr. Nicholson.
Here.
And Ms. Page.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, and I guess we didn't vote at that time, did we? Board members and members of the audience, if you would stand, Ms. Harvey will do the prayer for us, and Mr. Fredu will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please bow your heads. Thank you, my Heavenly Father, for allowing us this opportunity once again to meet. And thank you, Lord, that this meeting be productive, decent, and in order. And thank you for our safe journey back home. In your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Please face the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Superintendent Eloy, do you have any updates?
I have no updates at this time.
That's great. Board members, most of us attended the Louisiana School Board Association. A lot of good information was passed on, and some of the things that we learned from our attorney and from some of the speakers, I hope we all put in place here later on this year. The consent agenda.
Second.
We have an offer and a second on the consent agenda. But before we vote, board members, we have another trip that was turned in 30 days in advance, but it wasn't 30 days prior to our meeting. It was 30 days. They followed the rules, they just didn't know. I would like us to suspend our rules and add this agenda item, and actually let the superintendent read it.
Sir, this is Miss Jacqueline Rainwater. This is the JAG trip that they take every year. It's not coming out of any general funds or anything of that nature. It's coming out of some 21st century funds, and then also Title I and school activity funds from NJH. And again, they take this every year. It's a really great trip. And also Miss Rainwater did everything she was supposed to. She just didn't realize that the 30-day thing is from when we next vote. So.
It will take a unanimous vote to add this to the agenda, and do we hear a motion to add that item?
I will offer.
Second.
We have an offer by Mr. Harris and a second by Mr. Danzy. We'll vote right now on the adding it to the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's 100%, it's added. Now we have a motion by Mr. Harris and a second by Mr. Matuire to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Information report. Now, we had the opportunity to miss Mr. Lee last Thursday, and he's been somewhere since then, so there's no telling.
Y'all just returned from Lake Charles. I was also in Lake Charles last week at the LASAFAT meeting, which was federally assisted programs, the last three digits on. I will do a minor update on maintenance. They started pouring the concrete for our new building back there today at 1 o'clock. And so that's also, we'd like to talk at Lakeview. If y'all get a chance next week to go see the gator hole. It's had a massive update on the inside. It's the if you're not familiar with it, Barbara, it's
I know what it is now.
okay.
We're still learning.
It's been remodeled since we moved the baseball out of there to their own field house. We cleaned out some lockers and gave them a room to where they could do film review and all that. So it's an official football field house now. Let's do budgets. Finance budgets here. You will see that the first column is the budget for the year. Last year at this time is the second column, and where we're at right now is the third column. I am very happy, once again, still where payroll was. Once again, I'm still, when you pass the new salary schedule, you'll make sure you're on target. And we appear to be on target with everything here. With the general fund. Child nutrition was, remember, revenues were $1 million higher than expenses. Well, as I figured, don't get too excited. Sure enough, they kind of caught back up with each other as they did their accounting adjustments. And there's about, $300,000 difference, a little less than $300,000 difference between revenues, but revenues are still higher. That is good. There's also one big payment that's inbound that is not posted in these numbers that should make it next month. Title I, once again, when y'all are looking at these, the revenue side hasn't caught up because the money applied for has not been received. But when you, at the end of the year, the expenses and the revenues will always equal. So technically, we have spent an additional $450,000 in Title I over the same time last year. That's good. Title I was sometimes not always exhausted by the end of the year, and we're doing better with that.
More efficient. More efficient with our timeline.
More efficient with our time. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. ESSER 3, we're spending a good bit of money compared to last year. ESSER 2, once again, I always hope that we are able to spend all what's left in our balance here. But we should be, summer school is going to be quite extensive this year with 10 schools of summer school. So we are good to go. I don't, unless y'all have any questions, I'm actually pretty happy with how things are sitting right now with the, particularly with the general funds and with how salaries are going. You'll notice, like, for instance, expenditures and salaries. Do y'all see the difference here with child nutrition? Expenses last year is substantially higher this year, but even with this, our revenue is still keeping up with it. And I'm very happy about that. USDA did make an adjustment to give us a little bit more money because it's more expensive to run a meal because of inflation. But even with everything encountered here, I'm really happy with how things are going. I'll get, like I say, when you ever roll out a new salary schedule extensively different than what we had, you're always wanting to make sure your numbers you calculated were accurate, and they appear to have been. So I'm real happy where we're at now. The final test, though, is the end of the year. But I'm good right now. So unless there are any other questions?
Are you prepared to do sales tax?
Yeah, sales tax is next. Mm-hmm. And the last one there is sales tax. Good news again. Let the drawing of it. I always go down to about the second up from the bottom. Is this it here? Distributions. Nope, that's not distributions. Here's distributions. There you go, right there. 6.84% higher than this same month last year, the month of February. The cumulative for the year is an 8.28% cumulative increase.
Mr. Wascom,
Yes, sir.
that 6.8% is on top of an already very robust number that was last year.
Yes, sir.
That is,
Remember, I told you it was going to be hard to beat it?
Mhm.
I'm wrong. Apparently, it's fairly easy. But, yes, it was a very robust year last year. We were having 20% growth and 25% growth last year. Yeah. It's very hard to beat that number again and still grow at 6, 8, 10%. This is very good news. So, anyhow. And the strange thing is you can look at the last vehicle motor sales are all over the place. But still, they're still up $120,000. 2022 is higher than 2021, which is significantly higher than 2020. So this means that everything is active and going, and this is no Harbor Freight in these numbers yet. There's no Big Lots is not in these numbers yet. I'm hoping that next month that'll even be better. Okay. So that's that. That concludes my report on the informational reports.
Mr. Wascom,
Yes, sir.
President, in the field, I'd like to recapitulate a bit on the maintenance and go to Natchitoches Parish Technical Career Center.
MPTCC.
Right, the security, you're right, because from my understanding, they were supposed to get to that this week, right?
So, Lee, I was talking to Pastor Harris about this week.
Right.
It was my understanding when Ryan spoke that, and board members, y'all help me with this, that in order to have the camera feed to the secretary's office, to both buildings, there was a need to move to a wireless option. And Ryan was investigating that and moving forward with that. Do you know if he's made any?
He was waiting to hear back from somebody doing a quote. Let me, I can send that out in the emails to where that is for everybody. But the idea was, because it's basically two buildings, and they kind of come together like this. Well, the main building where we'd have to have two different people managing each door, or one person with a camera
Yeah, and that was the
managing
idea.
both.
One camera, both doors. But he said the hardwire option was not an option.
Right.
And I can't recall the technical reasons for that, but he was investigating the
You just can't-
wireless option.
Can't jackhammer. It's all concreted out.
I don't know if Ryan has looked, but Marthaville does have that same system in place. It's wireless. There are two buildings. It might be worth checking into how they did it,
Okay.
because it is two cameras, one in the principal's office, one in the secretary's, and it's that front door to the elementary building and the front door to the junior.
So as far as way as the
I think
elementary,
it's very important that we
finish that off.
Pastor Harris,
do whatever we need to do to get it done, because
I'm glad.
I will have to say, we
Pressing.
have been working on security, because remember, we put up that fencing, we fixed a lot
Right.
of the fencing.
very pressing,
Issue.
especially at that particular location.
Pastor Harris, I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know if I informed the entire board, but this would be the time to do so. We are instigating a purchase of 18 new metal detectors for every school, at least 2 for every school. Obviously, some of them will not need them as much, but we want to show that since all the things that happened last year, whether you're in elementary or high school, we want parents to feel safe that
That's right.
all those measures are in place.
That's it. At the end of the day.
Yes, sir.
Those will be ordered here shortly.
At the junior high school has been resolved. I think they were waiting for some, I think it had to do with.
Some metal detectors?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. They, it was actually interesting. They had received them. It was just a miscommunication where maintenance didn't realize they were there, and so they just had to be installed. And then we also brought them 4 or 5 of the wireless wands as well.
Right. So when we talk about metal detectors, it's the one that you walk in.
Walk through. You walk through.
We were in Franklin last week, and that's what they had. You walk through those metal.
We give schools the wireless ones in case they have other events and they want to expedite people coming in, but the best is the walkthrough,
Wands,
the wands.
yeah.
And besides the main entrance, what about other exits?
Yes, ma'am. That's what Mr. Kozad and Mr. Wascom looked at, making sure that, for instance, Provençal has a total separate building. They would need more than one. There's a few buildings, like I think.
Because we looked at it from his directive, and Mr. Kozad and I just sat there and looked at it and realized we need 2, like Provençal, for instance, as you said. Also, like Magnet, we needed one, because it's where the parents drop off and the bus drop off.
For instance,
Need 'em
one of
at
the
both
schools, like
locations.
E-Lab, was maybe the
Was the
only one
one.
that needed just one.
Right,
They really only have that one point of entry and exit, so.
right. The 2 lab schools are that way, yeah.
That's great.
The
Overlapping.
Doors at Goldon is still the same. We still don't have the buzz-in doors done.
I know.
I
I'm firing people for that right now. Yes, sir. I do understand.
I'm sorry.
And there's absolutely no excuse.
Wait.
I'm not firing employees. I'm firing
NPSB employees.
contractors. Yes, sir. I know exactly what's going on.
Thank you, sir.
No employees. I'm firing contractors we deal with. I
clarification.
understand.
Good, overlapping levels of security, that's what we need. Really, no, seriously.
No, we need performance from our vendors and.
No, I'm talking about the walk-in, the wands, the buzz-in, the windows, the people, on campus, overlapping levels of security, that really makes a difference.
Right.
We want, and I hate to use this term, but we want our schools to look like the hardest targets for these crazy
That's right.
people that exist in this world. Yes, ma'am. We actually, Ms. Page just asked, we are, and I haven't said that to Lee yet.
Oh, I'm adding more to
So I'm
my
actually
first story.
adding one to the school board as well. Because.
One?
Well, it'd have to.
We
be
have two entrances. Yeah, there we go.
So that means you're gonna lock these out, these far doors, everybody's gonna have to.
Well, they're actually locked. We can only exit them. Our fire marshal won't let us lock them off, but we can exit only. So,
And so
Yeah,
we're-
they have panic bars.
yeah, they're just push.
What I'm
push
saying, all
open.
entry points are gonna have to be through these two, right?
That's right. It'll be through these.
And so we have security and the ones and the security that would come through, walk through at all the schools, but especially junior high schools.
So we're not gonna delineate, because initially before all the craziness of last year, we did delineate and say, this is really a junior high school thing. And listen, I want y'all to know, I don't ever want a school to appear as a prison or anything like that, but the world we live in now, I don't care if it's an elementary or high school, we're giving it to everybody. Every school has these cameras out. Every school has these officers, and so when we look at the buzzers, the cameras, the locked doors, the security, and the walk-through metal detectors, that's a whole lot of layer upon layer of security.
It's what's needed.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have problems in more schools than others.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Is that it? Okay.
Mrs. Page. Mrs. Linda Page.
And the transportation,
Yes, sir. Ms.
We gonna,
is it on there?
Washington.
she's here.
I do want to mention something, because I usually don't give any credit to the so-called street committee, the rumor mill, but there's been some talk around town that the word I was told is that 50% of our staff at Weaver was gone. I just wanted to say that we've had one resignation in the entire year at Weaver, and that was for a legitimate reason. We've also been told that people are leaving the high school. It's not true. We're fully staffed. We've also heard, and I shared this with Ms. Washington, that they've had 17 resignations due to behavior on the buses. They've had 0 resignations due to behavior. They've had 2 because someone moved out of state and someone improved their technical skills and got a higher. So I just want to put that out there, that we are well-staffed and we are not losing people, because I have heard those rumors, and I'd love to put that to rest.
Well, I truly appreciate you addressing that, because I feel like our staffing district-wide is the best it's ever been, or since I've been on the board. Really, really good shape. So thank you for addressing that, those false statements.
Ms. Washington.
Good afternoon. Like Dr. Eloy said, we did lose 2 people, and one was due to moving, and the other one just improved the quality of life, as far as pay-wise and everything for his family. But we do have 5 people in the pipeline. 3 of them are already Class A. So the shortage of drivers that we did have is closing, is coming to a minimal. So within the next month, we should be fully staffed all the way 100% with 2 sub-drivers to fill in for the gap. So that's something we're looking forward to now. We've, I don't know if we did that, we did the Mardi Gras Parade in Clutreville, and we had a job fair at the unemployment office, and both of them, I don't know if that brought everybody in, but it's like all at one time, everybody started coming in. And so, you know, we're looking forward to that on our end, bringing them in, and the attitude with those, they're real positive and they're really excited about it. So, you know, that just makes me more excited as well. So on our end, we're becoming 100% staff shortly. Before the end of the school year, we will be 100% staff, you know. And then I've heard about the large summer school turnout, so that's gonna help a lot with everybody we're being fully staffed and everything, so.
So can I, Ms. Washington, I just want to share this. I don't know if the board is aware, and I'll be honest, I wasn't really aware until I had lunch with Echo, and that was kind of the whole leadership team. When there have been gaps, you know, like someone's out sick or someone retires in the middle of the year, unbeknownst to most of us, oftentimes Miss Washington is one of those who's out there doing bus routes, and so that's why when we have shortages or we have people retire early, you're not seeing real disruptions to service because, you know, Miss Washington and a lot of her administrative team, who really has a lot to do in-house in the office, they're taking that on their back and they're making sure that service is not interrupted for our kids.
Yeah, that is correct. I give my staff a high five, kudos to them, because when we are short, and then if someone calls in, we have to make it happen, you know. So we do whatever we can. So I really thank my staff, my in-house staff, for stepping up and going above and beyond, taking care of things within house, along with driving and making sure our kids get home safely.
So, Ms. Washington, thank you. So you drive a bus, create maps, manage the bus routes, and what else?
Or whatever is needed. Whatever is needed.
And Mr. Biville, I'm so glad you brought that up. We are working with Echo to get we have somewhat of an antiquated, it's correct, but an antiquated map of our school zones. Echo has been very helpful. We're still in the process because when we want to make sure it's perfect, and we'll be able to put that digital map on the website, because routinely y'all get calls, we get calls of, hey, I live on this road, where do I go to school? And that should be a simple thing that you go to the website to figure out. And so we're going to be able to provide that to our families shortly.
So y'all not having to do double routes now because of shortages?
Well, we're right at the moment we are, but we just make sure that the routes that we are, if, like for instance, if somebody has to go back and do another route, we try to see if the person that has a shorter route can unload and then they go back. So like with Weaver and East, getting out at 3:15, and if someone at the high school, they get out at 3 and delivers on Fairground or somewhere like that, then by the time they deliver their kids, it's maybe 3:20, and they head on to East and Weaver and pick up kids there. So it's not really a gap, a long period of time that they're having to wait at the school to get home. So it just, and it's a daily thing, so we never know which one.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah. So we just take it in stride. Really, we go route to route from AM to PM, just to make sure that as soon as AM is over, then we sit down and discuss PM, you know, how we're gonna get it covered, you know, because we want everybody home at a decent time.
And I know y'all think I'm sometimes overly positive and I'm that rah-rah guy, but, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Miss Washington truly is one of the unsung heroes of this district, and not just unsung, but one of the MVPs of this district, because
Thank you.
that is why y'all aren't getting the calls on these buses, and it's because of her and her staff.
You do a great job for Echo.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna make sure I tell them that too. I see them.
I told Ryan last week.
You
And
do a
all the
great
real
job.
estate agents in this town will love the maps you're gonna put together.
That's what I was about to say. Janet Bolton has
Oh,
been
my goodness, she is.
chewing that ever since I've been on the
Rightfully so.
school board.
Rightfully so.
Well, we were in
So
the middle
thank
of
you
a
so
session.
very much, Dr. Eloy, and working with Echo and whoever else putting it together. That should have been happening.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we were in the middle of a session.
If a driver
this
covers a
weekend.
second route, how are they
Doing that.
compensated? Is it
they-
full as
they-
the same?
Yeah, they still get additional pay. You know,
Is
you
it-
get a guarantee automatically, and so when you help out with another route or cover another route, you do get extra for that, you know.
Is it time and a half or just for
You get
cover?
paid
regular-
you get a guaranteed hour, you know, you do get, because, you know, a lot of routes are not over an hour. So you already guaranteed 2 hours, and then if you help with another route, it usually falls within that timeline. So, and you get paid, if you go over, let's say you go over your guarantee of 2 hours. So everything you go over, you still will get compensated for that as well.
Okay.
So the 2 hour guarantee is just the minimal you're gonna make. So anything that goes over that, you will be compensated for it.
So no one should be driving for free, you know?
Yeah, nobody's driving for free. I don't think they'll they would drive.
No,
Definitely hear from them.
That's not gonna happen.
That's a government regulation.
At today's age.
I need to check with you on an incident that occurred, but I won't
Okay,
address it here.
okay. Okay. Anybody else?
Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Just call me Miss Dot.
Okay.
Board members, we have two new items, and during the finance report, which are related to travel, actually out-of-state travel. And we have a out-of-state travel, policy in the executive, report. My question to the board, would it be prudent for us to iron out the details of our Natchitoches Parish School Board policy before we take or approve or consider approving any type of out-of-state travel?
I think that would be a great idea.
So take item, in the executive report, take item 6B prior to the finance committee.
We could do that.
What do you, I mean, we do this a lot, we pull things up, but in view of the light of approving, out-of-state travel, one of our goals here tonight is to, or this afternoon, is to, streamline our process and fix our policies. So, if we take that item and open that executive report, I'd like it for us to start with, some open discussion. First, we need a motion and a second to discuss this item, 6B.
I move we discuss item 6B.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Danzy and a second by Mr. Nicholson to discuss this item. Board members, we all received a number of policies, one that's current and with some changes, and a couple of samples from Ouachita, DeSoto, and Lafayette.
And those are two separate policies that, they both cover other things, but both those policies address the out-of-state travel. And I believe the portions that specifically address that are the portions in the highlighted yellow.
Okay. And so, opening the discussion, board members, what creates problems for you on this first policy with Natchitoches Parish School Board, GBRH, and DJD? Anything that you'd like to see changed, or even consider this policy?
Well, if we do consider this policy, I would like for us to go a paragraph above the highlighted area where it says, all employees who use their private vehicles for official board business shall be required to carry liability insurance in an amount set by the board to be eligible for reimbursement. Has that been in there?
Yes, ma'am. So,
Take it here.
what they do is when they utilize this, they fill out a form and they get it to me, and it's a pretty lengthy thing, but it has the form filled out and then a copy of their insurance, right, Ms. Finney? Yeah, and that's been done relatively, I think within the past 2 weeks, we had one of those come through.
Okay, so with that being said, Mr. Wascom, do you know if our current insurance policy carries a coverage for non-owned autos? Because that may not be legal if it does. And where it states that a liability limit set by the board, where is that limit and what is that limit?
Same question I had, Mr. Phelps. Same question.
The insurance guy will be here at 10 in the morning.
Would you mind asking him that? Yeah.
It's kind of,
He'll be here at 10 in the morning.
Okay, so we don't know what the limit is or in,
He
may have
told
to
me that
table
with
that.
all of our insurance issues, if something was left out or forgotten, that there's another kind of umbrella that kind of covers everything. But I will ask him specifically if this is.
okay.
This is the line item now. Like, for instance, if we finally find out that we own a piece of property we didn't know we owned it, and somebody does a trip and fall, that it's covered.
Okay.
Even though it's not identified in our list of assets.
Right.
And the same way it would be here as well.
Well, so that right there is definitely a specialty line coverage. And so I would hate for an incident to happen and then us really not know if we have that coverage or not. And then we really do need to identify what that limit is, which we may need to change the wording if we keep that, where it says, an amount set by the board, at least this amount, but can always carry a higher limit, because you don't want to put yourself in a predicament where someone does have an accident and they say, oh, well, I'm carrying 25, 50, 25, just like you said I should, and it's really like $100,000 accident, because that would come back on us.
In
So,
addition, board members, the same thing, you know.
right, so we need to be intentional with that wording if we choose to keep that.
Industry is usually at least a minimum of $1 million.
Yeah, but if we start telling employees they need to carry that high of a limit, I may go work somewhere else. I mean, that's a lot of coverage for an individual to carry.
But I'm talking about, for excess, if we need excess insurance.
Yeah, and generally have pool cars also, but you do have some that take their own vehicle.
Well, I have a question. This is kind of off what we're talking about, but it's still talking about the insurance. So when, let's say, example, Ms. Page has to go to a school, what is the policy on that? Because she's still working and she's still on the job.
I went to Lakeview today. I had 350, 200, but I mean, it's a.
Well, wait, what if a person does not have insurance at all? Like, do they, when you're doing local runs, how is that covered?
Well, maybe
No, I mean, some
they walk to
people may-
work, or
huh?
maybe they walk to work or something, so they may not have a vehicle to have insurance, right?
No, may not have insurance, is what you were saying.
Well,
If they don't have insurance, they're not supposed to be driving though.
No, but there could be,
That's what they not supposed to be.
Yeah.
We get all
yeah,
kind of calls.
but what you're saying is,
What I'm saying is, when Ms. Page leaves this building to go to another school,
Uninsured and
what is,
underinsured.
how is
voters.
that, is she covered under her insurance? God forbid something happens, but is she covered under her insurance, or is she covered under this?
These are excellent questions that I think the only person who can answer them, unfortunately, is the insurance agent tomorrow.
yeah, so specifically ask them if they
She's using a
have,
school board vehicle.
if we have
Personal
non-owned liability
She's not-
coverage.
Well, y'all know how bad of a driver Miss Page is too, so I mean.
But it's not a question if it's a board vehicle. There's
Correct. Now, there's other things with board vehicles where, those employees are held to a certain standard.
we still have board vehicles?
Well, maintenance.
Yeah, because I remember we used to have.
And
Mr. Cozad's gonna have one.
Yeah, as soon as he gets that truck. Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, so I think Lee's gonna get all those questions answered, which are very important, but philosophically speaking, there's kind of two, maybe three areas you can go with this. You can keep it the same, board still does all the out-of-state travel. The only thing that's been brought to me as to why you don't do this is because from a philosophical standpoint, Hammonds and Geis, and then also the School Board Association, they recommend any way you can reduce your agenda is best practice. That doesn't mean you have to do it, because like I told you, I polled 20 districts. Of those 20, 10 do it the way we do it currently. 10 said, no, we don't do it that way, we leave it to the superintendent. So you could keep it the same. You could also say that it's superintendent and designee that will dictate out-of-state travel, except for the board, because y'all will always know. I don't want to dictate y'all's travel. There's no skin in the game for me on that one. Then the third option is you give it to the superintendent, and I think we've talked about two things with that. Either A, you have a very itemized budget where you have a specific amount, and so whatever trips we go on are obviously budgeted, and once that budget is exhausted, you can't go anywhere. The other option is, and I think Mr. Benefield mentioned this earlier, was to have a cap. And to me, it's 6 of one, half a dozen other. Either way, you have an accountability piece in place to make sure that we're not willy-nilly going to Vegas and bringing every employee and stuff like that. So it's either the budgeted piece or it's a cap.
And I think it personally should be a cap at some point, so that
you know, if it goes over that, you can say, hey, wait a minute, I've got to go to the board with this.
Right.
And then we shouldn't make in,
So, and me and Mr. Benefield were talking about this offline this week. My other question is, for instance, teacher leader, and he had an answer for this, but I think it's pertinent for the entire board to weigh in. We are gonna have every school going to teacher leader, which almost every school in the state goes to it. Every school is gonna utilize different funds. They're gonna, Central will use their Title I funds. Weaver will use their Title I funds. The district staff going will use a different set of funds. Now collectively, I don't know what the price tag, but if you look at the collective as a district, we're gonna spend a lot of money. But those are each coming from different small buckets. Does the cap go for that entire trip, which is what Mr. Benefield had suggested, because
Event.
everyone's going to teacher leader?
Event.
The event, or does it go to every group? So it's, well, Central only spent $10,000, so they're under the cap, but if collectively you bring it together, we're over the cap. Does that question make sense?
yeah, it needs to be, well, it needs to be understood. That, okay, if it goes over 15, 20,000, whatever it is, whatever that number is,
Or
then it needs to have a board approval.
For the event as a whole? Okay.
Teacher leader wouldn't fall under this, right? Because it's in-state travel, not out of
I
state.
know, and that's a bad example, but I guess the other one would have been NIAT because they were doing it in the same fashion.
Right.
We were doing some, district Title II funds, but then there was also schools doing individual Title I school allotments. But what I'm hearing from y'all is, if there are multiple groups going, that is considered an event, and we would put a cap on the event. Okay.
Does every out-of-state travel come in front of the board? As in, when I was a yearbook teacher and I took my students through yearbook funds?
Currently, yes, ma'am. So that,
But right now, if you look at how many out-of-state travel requests we have during the course of a school year, they're marginal, tiny,
Tiny.
as opposed to what we used
that's
to have.
actually a good question, because here's my question. And we brought this up about 7 months ago. What do we consider cost to board? If you're using school-based funds that you fundraised, and say it's a $10,000 trip,
Right.
but it's not coming out of general or federal, do y'all consider that?
It's like the trip to Italy. Let that be your guiding principle.
So again, we have, and guys, I'm clarifying this because I want Ms. Kanika's looking at me. Every event, so say she goes to Italy, that's an event. But if she's not utilizing federal or general, do I have to bring it before y'all?
I would say yes. If we have employees and students that are traveling out of state, that probably needs to be on our agenda.
Now, we had some advice from our attorney not.
Okay.
And the reason,
Yeah, that.
reason
attorney
being
said no.
because the pandemic hit and there was money out on the table and they came before the board and said, okay, y'all approved my trip, where's my money? We can't go.
Mr. Hammonds actually said, when he looked at that, and he looked at, because, people were upset because they lost some of their money in that. And we asked him, where's our liability with that? And he said, you really don't have any. But then when he realized that we were approving it, that linkage, then
So the-
It was gray, it was very gray. It was a gray area, is what it was.
There's a big difference between out of state and out of country.
but we don't have an out-of-country policy.
No.
Everything is either in-state, it's either in-state or it's out-of-state.
The expense.
Well, technically, it's out of state.
Well, that's what I'm saying, yeah, so out-of-state covers our out-of-country, but we don't
Yeah.
have,
So they don't come to us at all if they're raising their own funds, because at some point, somebody has to say, okay, it's okay.
I was gonna say, somebody has to have permission.
Well, and what
to take
happens-
these
Raise your
students
funds, but you gotta
out of
get
state.
permission.
What happens if somebody gets hurt?
And to
Is
say
the
we're
board
not
liable for-
liable.
so we talked about this, I think Ms. Tankia talked a lot about it at one point, because we were talking about this very thing. So here's my deal, but this needs to supersede me as superintendent, because you're talking about the next and the next superintendent. I'm gonna approve out-of-country travels, because I love the educational tour company.
Right.
I mean, there are high schools all around the country that do these amazing trips to France, and if you purchase trip insurance and you have fundraised and you have the sponsor and you follow our policy while you're in France, have at it. And so I'll be honest with y'all, I'm gonna approve every single one of those. But I do believe one day, some kid in France is gonna break an ankle.
Right.
So then it comes to the board and said, what's y'all's feelings gonna be when that happens? And I approved it. I mean, we just kinda have to talk that through, because there wouldn't be any policy that says we did anything wrong in that, but
And I think,
God.
on that particular incident that happened, they did not purchase the insurance or something like that.
Some didn't.
Yeah, that's,
So you could put in that stipulation that you're not gonna, for trips like that, the board will not be involved except a mandate that, school-sponsored trips have to purchase trip insurance. I don't know.
because I'm just
Dig through
kind
this,
of,
we're getting deeper and
I
deeper.
know,
But
the
there are things
attorneys
that
are
pop
saying
up.
we're not going to be liable,
Yeah,
but we still going to be in a fight.
yeah,
Somebody's still going to sue us.
So we should have some policy to address that, even though it's a rare
That's maybe true.
So here's the deal.
occurrence.
Even if you have policy, doesn't mean you're not gonna get sued.
Yeah,
If you follow
I'm not gonna
policy
stop you
though,
from getting sued, just make sure that they follow the policy.
yes ma'am, as long as you
That's our
follow it, then that helps you
We
in
still
litigation.
win. We still can win.
Well, we had a situation where one of our employees many years ago was in Canada and ended up breaking a leg, ankle or something, and had to come back across the border so Blue Cross would work.
Wow.
So in Paris, I don't think Blue Cross works. So,
Who
I'm
paid
not
for
part
it?
of OGB.
there you go.
Who paid for it?
Well, in Italy is the extreme version of this, because no matter what policy we had in place, had those students got on that plane and made it to Italy prior to COVID and been
Over there.
over there for 6 months, no one would have been happy, but there wouldn't have been anything anyone had done. But we want to try to think of those rainy day situations as much as possible.
And for 3 months, we agonized, 2.5 months, we agonized, call after call. Remember that, Ms. Page?
Oh, yeah, it was something.
Okay, I'm sorry, can we go back to one thing? Because it sounded like y'all were saying events you want to cap. So I have events, what are y'all thinking in terms of a cap?
I think $25,000. That's just a number. Tell me if it's, doesn't
I
meet.
think that's a good number
Per event, right?
Or event?
per event.
And we're now, in this thing, we have to define, in the policy, we will have to define event. And an event is,
What's the average event?
so if you're going out of state, it's gonna be higher because of airfare.
Right.
And, but then it all depends on, so it's just gonna depend on how many people are going, honestly.
Right.
And it has to be some, if it's 24,990,
Well, that'll be every trip.
yeah, that'd be every
No,
trip. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
We're directly talking about out of state right now.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Out of state.
Well, we don't want to prevent anyone from an educational opportunity or something that's going to benefit the system, but we also need to make sure that we're doing the right thing with safeguards in place too.
And I think I also brought this up, so here's the only caveat to all that. I think y'all, in my time here, y'all never not approved a trip. But potentially one day, whether it's this board or a future board, they could potentially say no to a trip. And the only problem with that, and Mr. Nicholson, maybe you can attest to this, when we give school allocations of Title I funds, we, as a district, only have 2 ways to deny their expenditures on that. One, is it legal? Is it covered by Title I? And 2, do you have the money? As long as you have those 2 things, it is illegal for us as a district to tell Marthaville they can't utilize their Title I funds in that manner.
There are rules around, like if you're purchasing curriculum and things like that, it has to be.
Allowable.
Right.
But as long as it's an allowable, and that's what I'm saying, the only thing we can say is it allowable? If it's allowable, do you have the money? You're good to go. If it's not allowable, that's easy. We just say it's not allowable and everything. But my concern is if I, as superintendent, am not allowed to tell Weaver, you can't do this with your school allocated Title I funds because it's allowable, then I don't know if the board has the authority to do the same thing. And again, I know we're setting a $25,000 limit, and I know we always say yes, but the one time, if we ever get in that kind of situation where we do say no, and I don't know the legal ramifications of telling someone they can't spend their Title I funds in the way that they deem fit.
Am I
at the
right,
school level.
though, in saying that it's doubtful that a school is gonna be using their Title I funds to take trips? Like, surely they're not gonna spend $40,000 on a trip out of their Title I funds.
I would not think that a school would have the amount of people going to get to that number.
Right.
I agree. But when you talk about a school, I mean, Natchitoches Central has a very large school allocation of title funds, and if they were to go and they brought 10 people, it could easily happen. Now, that's the only place I could think that would easily happen. Everywhere else, the numbers would not probably allow.
And we could still do it above the cap, still prove it above the cap.
But the board would be aware of it,
Board would be aware
as
of it.
opposed to someone walking up to you in Walmart and said, hey, I heard 30 people went to a conference, and you go, what conference? You
So
see,
is 25,000 too high of a cap?
Yeah, is it too high? I mean, I just, a number I threw out.
It's okay.
I mean, I'll be honest with y'all, we don't out-of-state travel enough for me to have some historical data to say yay or nay. I was joking with Billy earlier. You have a superintendent who doesn't like to travel too much, so there's not a ton of travel going on. But I will say, the major one we're gonna talk about that we like to go to currently under this administration is the NIT. That one will be over because of the amount of people we take. But I don't think you base it on that one trip, your allotment, or your cap rather.
but you've got justification for it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And again, the board would have notification, so it fits the slot all the way around.
I'm not against 25,000. I do like that it's a round number, and I think it gives y'all coverage in the community when, because when someone looks at 25,000, they immediately think that we're going to Vegas, it's 2 people, when in reality it's 7 people, they're sharing rooms. It's all those things that we're doing, and context matters in those things, and I think that helps y'all out a lot.
7,500 a person, I mean, what do you do?
Well, I think they're wanting to do it as event, not per person.
Or you could actually put both in there in the wording, anything that went over 7,500 a person or 2,500 as a group.
5,000.
Okay, over
Right.
over 7,500 per person, or collectively 25,000.
So that means anything off continent, 7,500 will pop up, y'all will know about it.
Right.
So, and Mr. Benefield, I'm not trying to overstep, but I'm kind of taking notes as y'all say this. Is it going to be possible if we can table this,
That's what I was
so
gonna say.
then I can get all of this information and put it into a draft policy? Because right now we're just we're looking at all these things, but I don't think we have.
The more we talk, the more we have holes and gaps.
Because I have the event piece, I have the 25,000, 7,500. Then I also have the insurance piece that has to be answered.
And you have the title piece.
Title I. Then there's also, I'm assuming y'all don't want to change board travel at all, because there's no district in the state that I'm aware of that the board doesn't dictate their own travel. And I mean, there's no cap on that because it comes to y'all no matter what.
And just let the committee sort it out and then bring it back to us.
Well, that won't be until June, and we've got a lot of travel that's gonna happen between now and the end.
Well, I don't
The
even,
ones that's traveling,
well, let me do this. Let me just create 2 draft policies with y'all's information, and we have till April. And if y'all send me any other little details, and I'll try to put that all in there. I'll try to send it out to you before the Easter break, so that way you'll have even more time to look at it.
if we need to add or take away.
Exactly.
And Dr. Eloy, if you can, talking about historical data, if there's maybe one of the more expensive trips that was taken last year, it might be worth just looking at that number
Okay.
to see if our numbers are not way off where they should be.
Right.
I'll tell you, I thoroughly believe, now, we didn't have airfare because it was in Dallas, but I'm assuming because we took 32 last year that we were over yeah, because I mean, hotels alone.
It was a good conference.
Yeah, it was great, but I mean.
And it wasn't general funds, right? That
No,
was,
ma'am. No,
yeah,
that was, Title II,
right.
which, and again, Title II that's what they want you to use it for is PD, so.
Okay, we've got a lot of good things to think about here, and some research that needs to take place. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Would we like to change that motion to tabling this item?
I'll motion that we table this item.
Second.
We have a motion by Reverend Harris and a second by Ms. McGaskey. All in favor of tabling this item, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, Ms. Palmer.
Five, finance, facilities, services, and insurance. A, discuss and consider 2023 summer school salary schedule. Dr. Eloy.
You frozen?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was waiting for y'all to do I was waiting for y'all to do a motion in a second before I discussed it.
We need that. This item, do we have a motion for this item?
I offer.
Second.
Item.
5A.
5A. We have a motion by Mr. McTwire. Who's that second?
Reba.
Ms. Reba.
Okay, so real quick, since ESSER, in these larger summer schools, we have done a special salary schedule for summer school. Especially in the years past, it was hard to recruit people. I've talked to superintendents around the state, they're all having the same problem. Teachers are only coming to do summer school for a certain price because it's been rough. So this is the same amount we did last year. If I mentioned to y'all last Thursday, the only thing we added was we have 10 sites. So there are 4 principals who will not have summer school on their site. Now, these principals are not the site coordinators, but they will have extra work that they will do that the other principals will not have to do. So we are giving them a stipend for the fact that they're having to do that extra. But everything else is boilerplate from last year.
What is the extra that's,
So
to do?
what happens, well, number one, they're gonna help coordinate getting everything ready, the logistics of everything, but then the other part of it is a burden to a principal to have summer school on their site, because what ends up happening is all the maintenance that's supposed to occur in June, they have to turn everything around logistically and make all that happen in July. And they're also going to be also, to some degree, assisting the site coordinators.
Okay. In other locations, where they have in summer school.
They also have to coordinate with teachers to get their stuff out of their rooms and their stuff to
Thank
be
you.
back in their rooms, and it is a lot.
That's probably, I'm glad you said that, because that's probably the most frustrating piece of it all.
Is that stipend appropriate
With it, yeah.
for that?
So what we looked
$500?
at, so you have to realize principals are 12-month employees. So we thought that was appropriate because to go much higher than that was a precedent we didn't necessarily want to set in terms of you are a 12-month employee. This is out of the normal realm, but technically we don't have to give anything. This is more of, recognizing it, but we thought it was a sweet spot.
At these sites, are the secretaries staying for the summer too, or is it just the
So the
principal and
secretary, they overlap about 2 weeks.
Okay.
But they won't overlap for the entirety. But that first week that's the heavy lifting. Well, the first week and the last 2 days.
But for some of that time that summer school is on the campus, there will be no secretary there.
Correct.
Right? And at that point, it would be the principal
Yes, sir.
that's handling it all.
And principals get pulled off-site a lot during
Yes. Yeah.
June. So, and we're asking these folks to be more on-site than typical.
How many summer school coordinators are there?
10, isn't it?
Now, and let me just say, that first paragraph, the teachers, janitors, that all comes from ESSER. The stipend for principals, because of the allowabilities on ESSER, has to come from general, which I've already talked to Lee, and he's fine with that, to put it simply.
It's $5,000. Yeah.
Any more discussion, board members? We have a motion and a second on the floor for this line item. I'd like a roll call vote. Ms. Revels?
Mr. Danzy,
Yes.
Mr. McTwire,
Yes.
Mr. Benefiel,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey,
Yes,
Ms. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. Phelps,
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Fradu,
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson,
Yes.
and Ms. Page.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Ms. Palmer, before you proceed, Mrs. Page has a a job fair. I think it's out of state. She's inviting all the board members. Is that what you? No.
I apologize, I forgot that was a minute. I want to invite all of the board members and everybody here, and I know that everybody here is not certified, or you may not be certified, but you know somebody, or someone who's willing to do that, and you will help them. So our job fair is Wednesday between 9 and 11, right?
It's like church, bring someone you know.
That's right. So bring them, that will ensure that they get here, or see. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Palmer?
Okay. Item B, discuss and consider Alliance Compressor ITEP application.
Okay.
I move that we approve Alliance Compressor's request for industrial tax exemption.
I'll second.
We do have line item 5B, and they were discussed in committee last week. Are there any further discussion on this item? Board members, do we need any clarification? Okay. We have some members from Alliance here. Gentlemen would, oh, it's not a gentleman, I'm sorry.
No, gentlemen and ladies.
Yeah, would you like to speak to this line item?
The question was,
Doing B and C together?
No, let's just do B. Okay, Ms. Revels, could you do a roll call?
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matoire?
No.
Mr. Benefield?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
yes,
Mrs. McGaskey?
No,
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Fredo?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
And Ms. Page?
Yes.
Motion passed.
I'm sorry. Item C, discuss and consider Alliance Compressor ITEP application.
I'll offer.
a second.
Second.
Okay, we have an offer by Mr. Danzy and a second by Reverend Harris. This is the larger of the two. Any discussion on this item? We discussed it thoroughly in committee last Thursday.
Mr. Benfield, I know I'm not voting, but for my own edification, because I don't see the difference between the two. This is the larger, but is this the one that produced the 78 more jobs? Okay.
Right.
Okay. And the other one was the smaller one.
The
that
smaller
jumped.
one.
Okay.
That's correct. Okay, roll call vote, Ms. Page. Excuse me, Ms. Raffles.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Matoire?
No.
Mr. Benefield?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes,
Mrs. McGaskey?
yes,
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Fredo?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
And Ms. Page?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, item D, discuss and consider out-of-state travel for board members to attend NSBA conference in Orlando, Florida. Mr. Matoire and Mr. Harris.
well, first of all, I know I'm not gonna be able to go, but I think we do need to discuss the fact that, I think the, National School Board Association, and, the new association, National Association, has, split off. One is gonna be in Tampa, and the other one's in Orlando. I think the one that's in Tampa is going to be the second of, the 30th or 31st, one of them, of the end of the month. And we'll go through the 2nd of April. I won't be able to attend, but I think that in the future, I think it would be great that somebody would go, because we learned just this week from other states that they're doing things different. And just because they're southern states, we'll be at the Southern Regional in, I think, July, I think it is. But there are people around the nation that's doing education different. And I think we can't just do the same thing and expect to get different results. We have to look at how other people are doing things. A lot of things have happened out of us being exposed to new things. So this week was a wonderful conference. And so I did talk to Mr. Revels about going, but once I found out there was 2 different conferences and there was a conflict in my schedule, I won't be able to go.
And Mr. Harris was just talking, and I was just bringing it up, said if any of the board members wanted to go, I know I can't go to neither one of them, got too much going on. But if you ever get a chance to go to the national, it's amazing. And I always say we went to the national one time and come back and saved the board over $500,000 because with the bus company, the first one we had, you know, there was a time for the bid, but, you know, I used to be people in the office never had sent out a bid package. They was wanting to keep this company. And so this company called, the other company called and saved us over $500,000. And you just, like what y'all seen this week with the vendors and stuff, you probably got 1,000 vendors on it, you know, from anything from toilet tissue to a big old trailway school bus being in that building, you know, a bus that's showing it everything. Anything dealing with school is there. And, you know, it's amazing to see, and you learn a whole lot. And it's people all over the country, and you sit and talk with them with different.
I will say this, Dr. Pope was talking about these conferences, and I know we all really respect her. She was saying the Tampa conference, she was really pushing that because, you know, technically LSBA is no longer part of NSBA, but she was saying the Tampa one is
that's the one that's
really good.
The end of the month and through the 2nd. And if I can go, you know, I'll go myself. You know, there's a lot of conferences I go to. I don't tell the board nothing about it. I go because I want to know.
Okay, we had a motion by Reverend Harris.
No, it wasn't a motion. I think this mostly was a discussion. Was it a? Well, I guess
But, we already approved, like last year, right, that if a board member wanted to travel out of state, we could travel out of state, right? And the
yeah, I
board
think
would pay for
I'm
it.
not sure.
But we have to prove each conference each year we have to approve.
Okay.
That's right. And this one, LSBA is broken away from the National School Board Association because of some of the policies and some of the things that where they've landed. Anyway, for us to move forward, for us to consider, we need to get a motion in a second on this thing, on this line item, guys.
A motion.
I'll make a motion that if anybody want to go to the NSBA conference, they can go.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McGuire and a second by Reverend Harris. Any further discussion?
I just have a question about, are we not following this 30 days that we've been talking about for out of state? I mean, I'm only asking because I don't want us to be doing something we're expecting others in the parish to do.
Exactly.
So I'm concerned about that. And now if this is something we've already discussed prior to this and I'm missing it, then
No, it's a new item.
it's a new item, okay.
Well, my major concern is that if somebody does go to the conference, you have to pay non-member pricing, which is about $400 more than regular. And it's not just Louisiana that broke away from NSBA, 26 other states did. So,
Half the nation.
yeah, so there were major problems with policies there.
And I don't have a dog in the hunt, y'all, but I would only be concerned about the logistics for Miss Kanika. So she would need to know, like, how soon, I think she need to know, like, tonight who's going. Am I right, Miss Kanika?
If we vote for it.
Yeah, if you vote for it.
According to our policy now, neither one of these qualify for the 30 days though, correct? By these dates?
That's correct.
And I don't know if they stay in the same month every year. Is it always the same month, or do they change it around?
It's around April,
April?
but the one in Tampa is the end of the month,
End of March?
end of March. It's the end of March. It's like the 30th or something like that.
Oh, it's close.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks out.
The second.
So it's definitely not inside that window.
I just withdraw my motion and we need to, next year, just if, you know, bring it up earlier. It's,
Yeah.
Maybe bring it up in January if they have the dates announced.
Yeah, and see, the thing, if you go,
Early bird is December, you gotta be on that.
yeah, you do, to get the discounts and things that we used to do. We
Yeah, and
generally
the-
had to do it before the end of the
The
year.
non-member pricing is in that last
So who puts on the Tampa one?
COSBA.
That's
That's the new organization.
Oh, okay, that spawned after the.
Yeah, all those states went in together to create a new
Okay,
one.
so Mr. McGuire has withdrawn his motion on item D.
since it's not, it's, less than 30 days, if, is it our policy? Is it for the board or is it just for employees? The 30 days.
It was right on time last week.
Well, it's for everybody, is it not? The 30
Yes.
days is for everybody.
Just like going to the casino, day late and a dollar short.
You already been, huh?
Okay, Ms. Palmer, item E.
Item E, discuss and consider budget
Wait
adjustment.
a minute. We had the one right behind it. No, I'm right. You're right. I'm sorry.
Okay. Discuss and consider budget adjustments, March 2023.
I'm sorry, before we do that, so with a withdrawn motion, there's no action or anything?
No action.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure my notes reflect that.
Okay, you see before you, budget adjustments, this is our first one of the year. We'll probably have one, the next one in July. This is just updating and keeping up. In the past, it's hopefully will not be in the future, but in the past, we've just taken last year's numbers and made it the next year's new numbers for expectations. But, so this is my first chance, we're halfway through the year at this point, and to actually size up where we're at and make adjustments based on real life experience for this year. And that's what I'm presenting to y'all here. I went through each one of these line by line by line. Lots of payroll lines. So payroll is pretty much set. If you actually come down here to take a look at the salaries, I lowered, right in this area, I lowered salaries a little bit. I knew benefits were behind, so I kept that where it needed to be. We made some adjustments based on construction and different other things that have been going on. But overall, revenues have gone up, estimated, about 1.7 million. That's mostly all sales tax.
It's incredible.
Always good news.
Yeah.
So I made no changes to special funds, but those changes will be done at the next budget update. So this is the difference. I want to let y'all know the way I want to move budgeting in the future is we budget based on our expectations for the next year, not just take last year's experience and just readopt it. I wanted to, because every year is very different, particularly I guess construction quits on certain projects and we do other things. This is the type of budgeting I want to move to, a little bit more reactive than proactive, than being reactive.
What emphasis, does the MFP have, did you do on?
I actually looked at it. I had told y'all that MFP had gone down a little bit, and redoing the numbers, the answer is no. And the reason is they raised MFP, which I had forgotten about, to cover the $1,500 raise.
Right.
And it actually is up a touch. I did not raise it here, but it's actually up just a touch. So it's actually flat. But almost the entire local revenue line for $1,755,000 is almost 100% sales tax increases.
Yeah, and LSBA is petitioning for a 2.75% increase, so let's hope we get there. That would be.
Not only that, Bessie,
Having what, 15?
Yeah, Bessie,
Bessie passed a $2,000 a year raise for teachers,
That's part of the MFP.
right.
MFP discussion, right?
So the legislature has to prove it now.
Yeah. And that's where it's gonna get interesting.
Yeah, and we need to remind all of our legislatures that all of this lip service, talking about how they love public education, put your vote where your mouth is at. And I approve that message.
Great statement.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. We need to vote to approve the,
I'll offer.
Second.
have a motion by Reverend Harris, and second by Mr. Danzy to approve these budget updates. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Item F, discuss and consider out-of-state travel for board members to attend COSSBA conference in Tampa, Florida.
That's moot, because it's
Right.
No action.
no action.
That concludes
And that's the
finance.
new,
Yeah, that's the new one.
Yes, sir.
That's the one y'all wanna consider next year,
Yeah, that's in 2 weeks, though.
Next year.
the following year.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Ms. Palmer. Before we move to the remaining of the executive report, I'd like to welcome Mr. Mike Stewart back from his absence and hiatus. Thank you for all what you do for us, Mr. Mike.
Yes, indeed.
Go ahead. Item 6A, discuss and receive information regarding the ending of the NSU Lab School Leadership Pilot.
So, I'm sorry, doesn't have to be a motion on that one because it's discussion, right? So a few of y'all asked me some questions after that. You know, that was at the discretion of Dr. McAllister, although we are very much in agreement with it. Just so you're aware, that principal salary will come out of NSU's contribution, not ours. So this change, it actually puts a little more on the NSU side because an assistant principal is less expensive than a principal, but NSU is absorbing that. Ms. Page and I met with Dr. McAllister Monday, and I believe the ad for that position will be at the end of this month, and it will run for somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks, and then we will hopefully have someone selected by May with the hope that they will be in place by June 1.
So I move we approve it.
I don't think we have to. 'cause
Yeah,
they're paying-
we do?
they're-
That was an NSU pilot that they.
Oh, okay,
Yes,
that
sir.
was an issue.
They're paying for it. Yeah. Okay. Let me see.
So you'll have a full-time
Okay, so that's just
principal
information for
on
us.
campus of Middle Lab like back in the day, starting next year.
Item 6B, discuss and consider changes to the NPSB policy. We already did that. Is that correct?
That's the point system we discussed.
Yeah. And item 6C, discuss and receive 22-23 pupil progression revisions.
Second. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Palmer.
We have an offer by Reverend Harris, a second by Mrs. Tankia Palmer. On this item, any discussion? We went through it in depth last Thursday. It's a good document. It really clarifies what we're looking
Yeah,
for.
and it really doesn't change anything, y'all. It clarifies. So
You want a roll call, right?
It's just, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Does that conclude your,
Concludes it.
before we dismiss or move forward in the agenda, which we're pretty much out of agenda, board members, I just want to let you know how proud I am of all of us on this board and what we've done since January, the way we conduct ourselves at the meeting, the information that we present, the way we're prepared when we come to the meeting, and the things that go on at our meeting. Because not everyone can say that. And we do an excellent job of it. Also, all of the people in the central office that come to us with all this information that we ask for, thank y'all. And thank you very much, because we know it's a tough job. You already have another job, full-time, and we ask for more.
it's our pleasure.
Mr. President, I got two things I want to say. First of all, I want you all to be in prayer for Jackson Parish, because they had an accident, a wreck with school bus. Happened to be one of our dear friends who was driving the bus, and she's very much shaken over it. Secondly, I'm not going to steal all of the superintendent's thunder, but he has a whole lot of things that's coming up, and I thought he was going to just mention some of it, but I'm not going to.
I'll mention it.
I want to say one of the things. One of the things that's going on is that he and Mr. Wascom spoke a few months ago to me about the changing in how we go about getting our subs and things. That's one program that's being put in action even as we speak. They're doing the training thing. I think we're going to see good results, Ms. Page, because of that. And the other thing.
You want me to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, the first thing is substitutes now will get a robocall. No school will have to call out. They'll get an automatic robocall that says, "Hey, do you want to work here?" Press 1 if you do. Press 1 if you don't. Whatever. So that's exciting, but we have to train everyone on that, and we're in the process of that, and so that'll be fully implemented next year. The other piece, and I got to give credit to Pastor Harris because he hasn't stopped pestering me about it, is since y'all know I come from Pineville, a very strong theater program, and it's something I've always wanted to bring here, but the logistics and the infrastructure are hard to overcome. And, just the other day, I was talking to some of our teachers who have expertise in this area. And so we are setting up a meeting with NSU in the next 2 weeks to explore the idea of a district-wide program that would use students from every school. They wouldn't meet during school, they'd meet after, but we talk about elementary, middle, and high. We would ask NSU to allow us to use their facilities, but that's the major crux of the conversation. And they're open to that idea because we already have a facility use MOU with them, but I can't speak for them yet. And then once we get all those ducks in a row, we would then get our choirs, our dance lines, our orchestras, and our bands to be a part of that and bring them together. And, also our ag programs for set design, with the goal that we would have a spring of 24, what do we call it? Production.
Oh, wow.
Production. And that gives us, we believe that gives us a timeline that gives us enough time to have a quality production for next year. And then the idea would be in 24-25, right? Yeah, 24-25 to maybe have 2 productions.
Yeah.
So, in fact, you will see the first indication of this because Mr. Wascom has already added stipend for district drama, what'd you call it?
Yes.
District drama coordinator.
Drama coordinator.
Now, all that said, there's 1 million more bridges to cross. So, but we'll update y'all as we cross those bridges.
But I smell where the rock is cooking.
Now, question for you. Is there any way that we could potentially, NSU has some great productions. Can we put some high school students in that production?
So when we
Let them partner, piggyback.
when we meet with them, I'm a novice in this area. I don't know everything, so I would think we can discuss anything can be on the table, and there's no harm in asking. The worst they can always tell you is no, and then we just keep trying to figure it out. But these people like Dr. Hondel and those folks, they want to partner with us. It's just a matter of making sure it all kind of connects in the right way. So I think we have great partners, and where there's a will, there's a way.
Well, we keep talking about NSU and partnership and using our resources, and there you go. That's great.
Mr. Benefield, if I may, board members, I sent you all an email, a questionnaire email regarding the Capitol Conference. If you would, please check your emails and respond to that no later than tomorrow.
Mr. McTwire, do you have something for us?
We'll join.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Adjourned.
And I apologize to y'all, I haven't seen my